So, you want to review VODs like a challenger player. The first things you're going to need is a notebook and a pen. Preferably use a bigger notebook than this, like an A4 size notebook, and use a blank notebook that you're only going to use for VOD reviews. It's very important that you use a notebook to write your notes down. Don't try and stingy out and write notes on the computer or anything like that. It's much better for learning to write in a notepad, and you'll have a physical copy. You're not going to lose any of the stuff. You're going to be able to skim through your notes. You're going to be able to see all of your notes in a physical place. Really nice. You're going to be able to draw pictures. It's just very convenient to use a notebook. So you make sure you use a notebook. The first thing you want to write is the date that you're doing the VOD review and some basic information like the matchup, or maybe if you're VOD reviewing someone else's VOD, you write their name down. So let's say it's Timo versus Riven, and I'm watching iPav's VOD, I write iPav Timo versus Riven, the date, or if it's your own VOD, you don't have to write your own VOD, just write down the matchup that you're playing. That's the first thing you have at the top before you get into the game, and then you'll be ready to start recording notes. Now, when you're picking games to VOD review, pick games that either you're not sure how you lost, or they're just interesting games where a lot of different stuff happens and you have to make a lot of decisions. I'd recommend VOD reviewing games that are fresh in your memory. Like, don't VOD review a game from a month ago unless you're trying to compare it to your current gameplay or something like that, but just do a fresh in memory VOD, something that's very interesting. You're not sure how you lost, you're not sure what mistakes you made, and I promise you we'll be able to find a lot of mistakes within your gameplay. Now, the things you want to write down is anytime you make a mistake, write that down. Anytime you have a question, like if you're unsure about something, like let's say you're playing Timo, can I blinding dart this ability? If something in-game happens you're unsure about, write it down, put a question mark next to it. Anything interesting or worth noting, maybe something you want to practice in practice tool after, you say, oh, I was kind of sloppy here, write it down. Anything interesting, anything that can help you improve, write it down. Now, things that you want to go back to after the VOD review, put an asterisk next to them. So some things you write down, like for example, most of your mistakes you'll write down, but you won't need to do anything about. It'll be in your memory that you've made that mistake, but things that you want to go back to, things that you need to practice, things that you need to look back and things like maybe there's maths you need to do. Maybe you're trying to choose between two different items. You're like, should I have built this item here or this item? I'm not sure. Write it down. Which item would be better here, right? I need to go back and do the maths. Put an asterisk next to it. That is the kind of stuff you have to do so that after your VOD review, you can go back and you can fix all of the problems that you have in your gameplay that are things that you can practice or get better at. So right off the bat, as soon as you get in game, you need to start writing down your mistakes. And when you go to write down your mistakes, make sure to pause the game, go through. So for example, right at the beginning of the game, where are you standing level 1? Straight off the bat. Did you get to lane late? Why did you get to lane late? Maybe, write that down. That's a mistake. You got to lane late. Where are you standing level 1? Is that the best spot you could be standing? Where could you be standing? Write down different spots that you could be standing. In this specific game, where should you be? What are the enemies likely to do? Were you thinking about that in game? Where is the enemy jungler starting? Is it relevant to the game? Is it relevant to where you should be standing? Is that a spot that they should be starting? Because when you're in game, were you thinking about that? There's all these questions you have to ask yourself and just write down any significant points. And you'll really start to realize that you can really incrementally break the game down into these really tiny components, and all of these little things add up. That League of Legends is a game about tiny statistical chances of winning, right? If you stand in a slightly better spot, you're slightly more likely to win the game. And it may only win you 1 out of 1,000 games, but if you do 100 things that win you 1 out of 1,000 games, they start to add up really quick, and that's how you get a higher win rate, and that's how you get to the higher ranks, and that's really, really important. Don't focus too much on mechanical stuff where you can't specifically improve. Mostly focus on stuff like where you are, what you're doing, what decisions do you have, and what decisions did you pick. And when you're watching your VOD reviews, think about what you should do or what you're doing given the knowledge that you have. Because when you're watching a VOD review, you have a lot more knowledge than when you're actually in game. What should you be doing right here? Think about it. Should I be split pushing? What should I do not in like a general sense, but in a specific, where am I walking? Where should my character be going right now in this instance? Pause the VOD and just write down, oh, I think I should have done this and I did this, right? Should I auto attack them or should I auto attack and last hit that creep, right? That's all stuff that's very, very important. Just this tiny, minute thing. Another thing is warding. Should I be warding here, right? You can write down where you should be warding. And also it's important to write things down in the framework of what you could actually know. Don't write as much things down like, I should know the jungler is taking Raptors right now. Should you? What could you be doing actively while you're in the game? You might have, I had a chance to count the jungler's CS, right? That might be a thing you could do in game. You write that down. I didn't use this opportunity to count the jungler's CS. to see how many camps they've taken. If you write down all these things, if you write down your mistakes, you write down things that are interesting, you write down any questions you have, if you write all these things down, I guarantee you will fill a lot more paper than you think you will. When I was doing VOD reviews, I averaged doing 2 A4 sheets of paper per game, which I could have done more in some games, but that was what I averaged writing my notes. I promise you, doing VOD reviews is going to be the best way you can improve at the game. It is way faster than playing games. And when I got to my peak rank, which was 460 LP Challenger, that's how I got there. It was by reviewing my games. I would review 1 game a day, and I'd alternate between reviewing one of my games and reviewing a pro player game, or a high-ranked player. So I was reviewing, like, IPEV games, IPEV was the highest-ranked Teemo player at the time, and I played Teemo, so I'd review an IPEV game, or an Explorer game, or whatever. So if you main a champion, find who the best people at that champ, and review their games. Review your games, review their games. And when you review someone else's game, you should really be thinking, what would I do here, and what do they do? And who's correct? That's what you should be thinking. You should write down, I would have done this, but they did this. Very interesting. That's the kind of stuff you should write down. It's interesting stuff that's different. Try and predict before it happens. Pause the game before they make a decision, and think, what would I do? Pause if they're going to buy an item. What would I buy here? What do they buy? See what they buy. They might be incorrect. Don't always assume that even high-ranked players are always correct. But you should be comparing and then trying to adjust and evaluate what the best thing you can do for your gameplay is. That's going to be all for today's video. Make sure to drop a comment on anything else you want me to cover. I'm not actively playing a lot of League at the moment, but I used to play a lot of League, and I feel like I have a lot of knowledge on the game, and I'm willing to make these educational tutorial type videos for players who want to improve at the game. And so if there's anything you guys want to learn, make sure to comment down below. Leave a thumbs up if you liked it. If you didn't like the video, leave a downvote, because it gives me an indicator of how accurate or how good my information is, I guess. And also, if you want to see more of my videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and have a wonderful day.